Okay guys, here's your next video on scientific notation. In the last video, you learned about writing scientific notation from a really large number. And today we're going to work at writing numbers in scientific notation that are really small. So let's review what we learned in the last video. So for example, if you had a number like 4.67 times 10 to the third power, this tells me that I'm going to move my decimal 3 spaces to the right because my exponent tells me how many spaces I'm going to move my decimal. If it's positive, I'm going to move my decimal to the right. So I'm going to take 4.67. I'm going to move my decimal 3 spaces to the right, and it's going to land right there. I'm going to fill in the empty swoop with a 0, and I end up with 4670, which is 4,670. So this number right here is written in scientific notation up here. So these two things are saying the exact same number, the exact same value. This is in standard form. This is in scientific notation. So and what we learned yesterday was all about really large numbers. So today we're going to go over what happens when you get a really small number. So let's say I have, again, something like 3.54 times 10 to the negative 3 power. Now this, I'm going to use the exponent the same way I did earlier. The 3 tells me how many spaces I'm going to move, but the negative tells me which direction. This time I'm going to move my decimal to the left. So I'm going to take my 3.54, I'm going to find my decimal and move it 3 spaces to the left. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to land my decimal right there, fill in my swoops with 0, and rewrite my answer. So I have 0.00354. Now, since I don't have a number in front of the decimal, I need to put a 0 for a placeholder. So this number right here is this is the tens place, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, 100,000s. So this number right here is 354 hundred thousandths. So this is a very tiny number. It's very small. And the negative exponent tells me that it's going to be a small number. Okay, and that makes sense because you guys already learned about negative exponents in the beginning of our chapter 10. That negative exponents really are representing a fraction. Remember, to represent this 10 to the negative third, you would flip your base and get 1/10, and the 10 would have an exponent of a 3. So you'd actually end up with 1 over 1,000, and you'll be multiplying to 3.54, and you'll end up with this answer. So let's try another one. So what if I just had something like 5 times 10 to the negative 4th power? Well, I know I'm going to start with my 5, so I'm going to write down my 5. My decimal on a whole number is behind it. So here's my decimal when I can't see it. The 4 tells me how many places I'm going to move my decimal. The negative tells me I'm going to move it to the left. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, write my decimal, fill in my swoops with zeros, and then I'm going to rewrite my answer. I have decimal 0005. I have no number in front of the decimal, so I need to put a 0 as a placeholder. And I'm going to figure out what this number is. This is the tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000ths place. So this number is read 5 10,000ths. So it's a very small number. And it should be because we have a negative exponent. Those represent small numbers. Okay, now let's try to use a number written in standard form, and we're going to write it in scientific notation. So let's say we have 0.083, and I want to write that in scientific notation. Well, remember, even with the other numbers that we did that were really large, we moved our decimal to create a number that is 1 or greater and less than 10, and then we multiply it by a power of 10. So I need to move this decimal to create a number greater than 1 and less than 10. Well, that means I need to move my decimal right there, because I know if I move it right there, I'll have 8.3, which is a little bigger than 8, so it is greater than 1 and it's less than 10. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to write 8.3 because the zeros in front of the 8 don't affect its value. So I'm going to use the 8.3 times a power of 10. And remember, to figure out what exponent we're going to use on the 10, we need to figure out how many spaces did we move our decimal. We moved our decimal 2 spaces, so we're going to make it a 2. But here's where we need to figure out if our 2 should be positive or negative. And if you can see, we moved our decimal 2 places this way, but to get back to our original, we would have to go 2 places to the left. So that means this is going to be a negative 2. And that makes sense, because if it was a positive 2, we'd have to move this decimal here 2 spaces to the right, and that wouldn't get us our original number. We need to make an exponent here that will get us back to our original number. And the only way to get back to this original number is to move our decimal 2 spaces to the left. And that's why it's a negative 2. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, what if we had something like this? Again, we need to create a number that's 1 or larger and less than 10. So I need to move my decimal to create that. So if I move it, let's say here, I would have 40.5, and that's too big. I need to move it between the 4 and the 0, and I'll get 4.05. So that's what I want, because I know that's greater than 1 and less than 10. So I've got 4.05 times a power of 10. Let's go back and see how many spaces I moved my decimal. 1, 2, 3. I moved it 3 spaces. So in order to get back to the original number, I would have to move it to the left. So my exponent is negative. And you can always double check your work. You can always figure out and redo this and figure out, will you get back to your original number if you solved this? Well, let's try it. 4.05. I'm going to move 3 spaces to the left. 1, 2, 3. Fill in my spaces with swoops. Rewrite my number and see if I get my original number. And I do. I get the original number. Oh, I forgot my 0 here. My bad. And I got my original number. Okay, so that gives you a little idea about negative exponents. Now I just want to go through a little bit of what you might run into on your homework assignment. So I want you to be able to identify if something is in scientific notation. So for example, if I had something like this, 3.2 times 8 to the negative third power, you are trying to figure out if this is in scientific notation. So you have 2 things that you need to look at. You need to look at if you have a factor that is greater than 1 and less than 10, or 1 or greater and less than 10, which this is. 3.2 is a little larger than 3, so it is 1 or greater, and it is less than 10 at the same time. So this number is okay. But if you look at this one, this is 8 to the negative third power. But remember, the criteria for scientific notation is you have to multiply it by a power of 10. Well, this isn't a power of 10. So this is incorrect. It's not in scientific notation. Now, it does equal a value. You could solve this. You could figure out what 8 to the negative third power is. You could multiply it to 3.2 and actually get the number that this is representing. But this isn't truly in scientific notation. So let's try another one. What if we had something like this? 40.2 times 10 to the fourth power. Well, let's check our criteria. This right here, this number, the factor needs to be 1 or greater and less than 10. Well, you can clearly see 40 is not less than 10. So this number is not correct. So we know right away it's not in scientific notation. Now, if you look over here, this does have it is being multiplied by a power of 10. So this part was okay, but this is not. So this one is not in scientific notation. What if you had something like this? This looks like it's in scientific notation. However, this number right here is not 1 or greater. This is less than 1. This is 0.07, which is 7/100ths of something. So this is not big enough. So in order to make it big enough, we'd have to change this. But we'll get to that till the next lesson, to another lesson. But this number is okay. This one is not. So it's not in scientific scientific notation. Okay, this number looks really large, but this is 6 and a little bit. So this is 1 or larger, and it's less than 10. So this number is okay. This one, is it a power of 10? Yes. This one is okay. So this one is in scientific notation. This one is okay. Okay, so I hope that helps you a little bit on the homework assignments for 10.5 and 10.6. If you need some assistance with those, let me know. Otherwise, get started on those and we will look over some of your answers on Monday and answer any questions you may have.